right, Keith, the red light's on. So this is when most people get really nervous. How you feeling?
I don't get nervous.
No, there wasn't nothing. Look at that. He's a pro. He's a pro, guys. So before we start, why don't you tell my listeners what you had for breakfast this morning?
I'm drinking a cup of coffee right now, and it's 11 o'clock. So, and that's my breakfast.
There it is. We're in it. We're in the breakfast time right now. So awesome, cool.
Yeah.
Well, instead of putting you on the spot with breakfast questions, why don't you tell my listeners who you are and what you're currently raising money for over on Kickstarter?
Yeah. So my name is Keith Matejka. I run a one-man board game publishing company called Thunderworks Games. That we've been around since been around since 2013. So I publish, I think I have 8 games published at this point. About half of them are ones that I designed. Half of them are from designs from other designers. My 2 most well-known board games one is called Role Player, which is a dice manipulation game about building fantasy characters. It's a character building game. Okay. And then my second kind of most popular game is a game called Cartographers. It's a map building game. So those 2 games in particular are both kind of fantasy based, but I've got some other titles that are more historical and et cetera. But anyway, I've done all of my projects I've done on Kickstarter, supported with Kickstarter backers, except for one. Right now I've got a project on Kickstarter right now, which is the sequel to Cartographers called Cartographers Heroes. And it's a standalone game, but you can mix it with the previous version as well. And it's got 3 small expansions that you can also get. And then it's basically a game about everybody at the table is drawing maps, drawing their own map. And the queen has decided what goals that you should have. They're called the Queen's Edicts, and they're basically scoring cards. And then each round, these cards get flipped, and it tells you like which the map sheet is like a grid, like just of squares. Okay. And you're kind of drawing Tetris shapes based on the cards that are getting flipped out, and then you're filling them in with like either forest or water or farmland or villages based on kind of the cards that are being flipped out. So each time a card flips, you have a couple options, and then you can place it wherever you want on the board. Kind of the hook, or the kind of one of the more notable things about it is a lot of this style of game is called a flip and write, or sometimes it's lumped in with roll and write games.
Yeah, I've never heard of that
type of board game that have become very, very popular over the last couple of years. In this one, in many flip and write games or roll and write games, there's not a whole lot of player interaction where you're like affecting the other players a whole lot. Where in this one, it does have a little bit of that. And so what happens is within this deck that's flipping cards, where you're drawing things, shuffled within there are called ambush cards. And when they flip, then everybody has to pass their map to their neighbor, and then they're going to draw these monsters on their board, and then they get their map back. And then for the rest of the game, you're kind of dealing with the negative impact of those monsters. But it's palatable, like kind of the take that, or kind of the piece there is it doesn't feel super mean because everybody's doing it to each other at the same time.
Right. Yeah, it's like not one villain. Everybody's a villain at that point, right?
We're sharing in our misery together. So yeah, Cartographers Heroes is on Kickstarter right now. It's I think it's my 9th project.
It's cool.
So and this is my second Kickstarter of this year. So
that's cool. So now this one though, just so for clarity, this is an expansion pack to the original one, or is it somewhat still the same, or how what does that kind of mean, like an expansion pack to people who might not know?
So traditionally, an expansion is like requires the base game to play. That is not true for this. So the Cartographers Heroes is a standalone game. You can play it by itself, but you could also integrate it with the previous version. Most of the cards are all brand new. So they're like, in the original version, you had like these 4 different monsters that could be drawn on people's maps. And this one, you got 4 totally different monsters, and they have some special abilities. This one has some heroes in the deck. When they flip out, they can help you kill some of the monsters that are on your map. Whereas on the previous version, there weren't any heroes, but there are these ruin cards, which force the players to kind of draw on certain spaces, restricting kind of, they can't just draw wherever they want when these cards come out. So there's some differences between the games, but and they all they have a little bit of their different flavor. But definitely, if you played the older version, getting up to speed on this new version is super fast because there's just a couple rule changes. And like the cards that flip out that have like shapes on them that you're supposed to draw on different terrain types, those are all they're similar, but they're different shapes, or the combinations of the terrains are a little bit different. But those are the big pieces. The new map packs, which are also part of the expansion, are totally new, and they're compatible with the old version of Cartographer or the new version of Cartographer. And they give you brand new maps, and they've got like some special cards that go with them. The first one takes place on a map where there's a big volcano in the center of the map, and there's some cards added to your deck where as you flip them out, then they're going to draw lava flows on your map, destroying some of the stuff that maybe you drew on there already, or you can draw the lava flow over the monster your buddy put on your sheet or whatever. The second one is in the plane of knowledge. So this is a world that I've been building up over multiple games. And these kind of locations of these map packs are related to that. But this one takes place in this place called Afrild, the Plane of Knowledge, and it's basically these islands that are kind of made out of stone that are floating on this big, massive gray sea. And in that version, you have to kind of connect the islands so that you can map out different parts of the islands as you go. And it gives you some new scoring opportunities and some different decisions. And then the third one, you're basically... half of the map is underground and half of it is above ground. So you're like tunneling down underneath the city when you're connecting things. And mechanically what that means is that instead of just drawing whatever you want, wherever you want, you have to always be connected to something else that's been drawn. So you can tunnel back to the gate. So those are kind of the super, the big things. There's also, with the original Cartographers, I had a little like 8-card mini expansion that kind of let you break the rules of the game for a cost. And that was something that I kind of gave with purchase when people bought directly from me as a publisher instead of buying on Amazon or whatever. And I have another one of those. So there's another mini expansion that you get for free if you order it through Kickstarter or you buy it from me after the fact.
That's cool. That's cool. Where was the origins of this game? Like, how did it get started? Where was the the sketch, the real quick sketch of it? Like, where did this start? So it seems like this is a big world that's being created here, Right. Yeah. This Cartographers game came from a designer named Jordi Adan. He's a Brazilian gentleman. And so this one I did not design. I designed Role Player, and this one was designed by Jordi. And the new version, some of the design elements went over to a friend and developer named John Brieger. But anyway, the original game kind of came to me as like just a friend saying, "Hey, dude, you should check out this game. I think it would really fit your line. I think you're gonna dig it. You should do it." And I was like, people say that stuff to me all the time. Like, dude, I got this great game idea, which is cool. Great. You never know where a great game idea is going to come from. Right. But sometimes it feels like everybody in the world thinks they have a great game idea. And I have my own great game ideas that I don't have time to work on. But this one, it was like from a trusted friend. And he's like, you should check this out. And I started looking at it, and I started reading the rules. And I was like, dude, these rules are horrible. Because they were translated from Brazilian Portuguese. Right. And it was kind of framed as like, all right, that's cool. Can you clean? I started asking questions about the rules. And then I was like, I'll just rewrite the rules for you. They're not that long. Right. And this is a friend of mine. And I wasn't really that interested in looking at it, mainly because I was busy with other stuff. And then I translated the rules, and I was like, well, I know how to play it now. I might as well try it. So I sat down and played. I was like, dude, this is pretty cool. Yeah. I want to do this game. So then that's kind of where I went. So at that point, what are, like, in your position, what are you looking for? I'm assuming this isn't a full out, all the artwork's not there at this point. Right. But I mean, are you just looking at like the roots are here? And then what are you doing from there?
Yeah, there's no artwork, and then the game still needed development, which is like taking it to the last 10%. The game has scoring cards. The original prototype had 4 of them. We ended up with 16 of them at the end of development. We ended up kind of moving some icons around to make to solve a couple kind of edge case problems, and then besides that, it's just like getting all the artwork done and doing any final play testing, and then starting to work with the manufacturer. The original Cartographers was one that I didn't do Kickstarter on. That was it was an experiment project. I was like, this game is small. I tried using a different manufacturer. I tried not going to Kickstarter. And it turned out to be this huge success. It did really, really well. It sold, of all the games that I've published, Cartographers is the one that I've sold the most copies of.
That's interesting.
So this is the one that's on Kickstarter now is the follow-up to it.
Right.
And I am going to Kickstarter. So that says, that's different. Why are you doing that, Keith? Basically, I think Kickstarter is a great place for like deluxe versions of games or like really deluxifying titles. And in this one, like, because I was doing all this more content, I really wanted to do like a fancy box, like the hardcore gamers like are really into how their games are stored, which sometimes feels a little crazy, but and I wanted to do this deluxe box for fans of the game, and it just didn't seem like it was a good idea as just a straight to retail product. So I was like, well, let's just throw it on Kickstarter. I mean, the biggest benefit for Kickstarter for me at this point in my kind of growth is just figuring out how interested people are in this thing.
Right.
And it's doing really well. So people seem super interested. So
that's interesting. So like, I'm fascinated on your work in this. When something comes to you, what are you looking for that you see the potential to keep going with it though? Because I'm imagining you mentioned you get a lot of stuff thrown you, right? Some stuff you just got to look at it and go, this is just not going to be a good game. Like this.
I mean, there's a lot of it, right? And some of it is just because like my personality is relatively critical, like I'm always like pointing out things that I wish would be better about like almost everything I see, Right. And I just play. Some different companies have strategies as to like what the kind of games they're looking for, or like certain price points, or like certain themes or mechanics that they want to see, or whether they do cooperative stuff. And my criteria of like what game I want to sign is like so arbitrary that it's somewhat laughable. But it's basically like how much do I personally like this game?
Right.
I play it and I say, oh, this game's really cool. Then I'm like, well, how could that fit into the stuff that I'm doing? And if that seems like it's something that I want to either risk, or it seems like an obvious, a kind of obvious thing that I could do, then assuming that I have bandwidth, like I just say, yeah, let's do this game. But if like if a game might come in and it might be a great game, but if I don't really like it that much, even though I can recognize that it's a great game, I won't do it.
Right.
And the board game industry is small, and a lot of people just kind of know each other.
Yeah.
And so people will make recommendations. So, like for example, I played a prototype of a game at a convention, not in maybe 2 years ago now.
Not in a while ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I could see that it was really good. I was like, this is a good game. This is like the kind of game that I know certain people really like, but it just doesn't trip my trigger in terms of things that I like. Like, I don't really like space games for some reason. I don't know why. It's just not a genre. I like a theme that I like very much, and it was kind of very much engine building on another planet. And mechanically, I thought it was really interesting, but thematically, I didn't like it, and I thought like retheming it, which is something that happens pretty frequently. If like a game comes in as like a horseback riding game, and then when they finally publish it, it's about snowball fights or whatever. Like people change the themes. Yeah. And there was so much content, and like there's so many mechanical things that really worked well within the theme that he had, that I thought like retheming it was going to be like this massive task.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, I'm always thinking about like, how do I want to be spending my time?
Sure.
So in that experience, like I saw this great game, and I just say, it's not for me, but you should talk to this person, and this person,
right?
Because those guys like those kind of games,
right?
And they might be interested in this. So like you try to direct fledgling or even just well-known or designers that are pitching games, like try to help them find homes for their games, right?
Yeah. Now, do you find that because you make games, you're looking at it differently than, let's just say, a guy like me who I don't make a game? I might just sit down and go, I had fun with it. That was a fun Friday night, Saturday night. Like
100%.
Or you could look at it going, come on, you're not going to do that. That's not how that's going to work.
Right, 100%. As soon as I see the box, I'm thinking critically about like how I would have done it differently.
Right.
Like, oh my gosh, or sometimes it's like, oh man, the spot UV finish on this box looks amazing, or like, man, they laid out the rule book and they only did single column. They should have done double column, like in terms of like how the text is laid out. Or I can't believe they wasted this an entire page with a piece of artwork where they could have used more examples. Those are kind of it's annoying. I annoy myself with that kind of stuff.
It's a little bit of a curse. It sounds like that.
Right. Can you stop? I'm talking to myself like, can you stop and just like have fun, dude?
I got that over here too. I mean, we talked a little bit about music before, but I used to own recording studios, and I that was my world. I had 4 of them going on, and I still do live sound, but like I haven't enjoyed music since I got really like actually it became a thing in my world.
Right.
Like I don't enjoy it anymore. Everything I'm listening to going wrong.
Like that kick drum. What were they thinking?
Not right. That's the wrong frequency. I wouldn't have done that. Yeah. Yeah. Ask my wife about going to a concert with me. She loves it.
Yeah. So I mean, as a side note, like I have a bachelor's degree in music recording technology, and I worked in a recording studio for a while. And like my life has kind of gone through these like 3 phases so far. So like I was super into music, and I played in bands, and I went to college for music, and then I started working in a recording studio, and I said, I hate this. I don't know why anybody does this. People are working crazy hours to get paid next to nothing, and they can't balance their life and family and work. So I was like, I'm out. I got bills to pay. And then I ran into I started in the video game industry as like a low-level tester, and I worked through production, and because I loved video games, and I worked in the video game industry for 15 years. And it's like after you're in it for a certain amount of time, you see how the sausage is made. Like the magic kind of starts going away, and I burn out. And it's like, okay. Then I started this new passion for board games again, and now I'm doing board games full time. So I'm just like, not constantly, but I often am thinking about how do I delay that burnout? Like how do I minimize that magic from going away?
Sure.
And there's some days when it's hard to find that magic again, but
I hear you.
especially kind of during this pandemic where I don't get to play games with my friends, which is like the big this is the big love of board games, is like sitting around a table with people that you like and having a great time and sharing this experience. And that's really hard right now. I mean, a lot of people are playing board games digitally over things like Tabletopia and Tabletop Simulator and Board Game Arena and like all these digital board game platforms, which, it's a substitute. It's,
it's no different than watching a concert on Facebook Live.
Yeah. It's like,
it is a band playing. Like it exists.
And I'm technically having fun, but it pales in comparison, right?
Right. Now, are you thinking about that? Of like, will board game industry take a hit if we are 2 more years of this? Do you feel like it has to go back to, I got to have an app for my game for some reason, or whatever?
I think in general the board game industry is faring fairly well in the pandemic, right? Yeah. So like, people are looking for something to do at their houses with their families that they're stuck with,
Right.
And so like puzzles are selling like crazy. And board games are doing really, really well. The retailers who have like the brick and mortar stores where people come in and buy stuff, like a lot of those guys have transitioned to more online sales and like doing kind of like buying stuff. You buy a board game at their store online, and then they drive it to your house, kind of delivery services.
Right.
And so the retailers really had to scramble to kind of keep afloat. But there's retailers that are dedicated to online sales. I mean, obviously Amazon is the big giant, but there's other big ones that are selling primarily board games online, and my understanding is that they're doing very well.
Yeah. So, speaking of retail, I've actually heard this quite a few times. Maybe you can speak on it. Like, is the retailers still being annoyed by Kickstarter? Like, isn't there like a friction point between retailers and Kickstarter that like some people are like, no, I hate this, type of stuff.
Right. I mean, definitely early on when board games were kind of coming to be a big thing on Kickstarter, there was a lot of kind of conflict, I think, between retailers and Kickstarters, Kickstarter creators or backers or whatever. So just the idea is like retailers are thinking this whole marketplace over here is like basically stealing my sale. And the truth is that Kickstarter is not going anywhere. Right? Like crowdfunding isn't going anywhere. So retailers have had to kind of adapt their thinking, and I think some have been more successful than others. But I think in general, there's more, creators are creating retailer level pledges. There's from a retailer's perspective, obviously I'm not a retailer, but from what I've heard is that it takes more time for a retailer to kind of follow things on Kickstarter and manage that process. And then also for a retailer to kind of commit that amount of money for a product that they might get in 6, 9, 12 months, is like you're pulling a lot of the liquidity out of the company to do other things. So
sure.
At least from me, I always, at least in the last 4 or 5 projects, I've definitely made sure to have a retailer pledge level, and I collect the money from them, besides like a deposit, like collect their money way out, like pretty much as the games are coming to their door, so that like I'm not pulling their money out, a lot of their money out for a long time. And then there's always this exclusivity topic when it comes to Kickstarter and retailers, and well, Kickstarter in general. Well, there's like 2 main, in my opinion, there's kind of 2 kind of offers that you can give Kickstarter backers that they expect. And that's either 1, a significant discount, or 2, exclusive content.
Right.
My perspective in general is that I don't do exclusive content because it creates this bad experience for my customers that walk into a store 6 months after the game's out and they say, oh, I got the the pared down version of the game.
Right, yeah.
Wow, this is a bad experience. Yeah. So I don't do that so much. I do offer some of these kind of deluxe boxes that I know don't really seem like retail products to me, so that don't go to retail. But I never do anything where it's you can only get it here. You can always buy it from my website. You can always buy it from me at a convention. Assume those happen again, someday. Yeah. Just because I don't want to kind of leave my customer out in the lurch of like. There was this promo card that came out that I can never find, and I've been as a gamer, I've been that guy that like buys a game late, and then I'm like, oh, there was an expansion. Oh, you had to be a part of the Kickstarter. That was 7 years ago. That sucks.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of trying to see the world from the backer's perspective, because I was backing Kickstarter projects a lot earlier than I was creating them.
Right.
So that's where I'm coming from.
Cool. And what do you think has been, over the course of your time making Kickstarters, what have you seen the biggest changes happen maybe in like the last 2 years or so?
Definitely, I feel like when we were talking about those discounts and those benefits for people, like I see companies offering less of a discount and less benefits to backers, I think. I think that's coming, especially for small companies, and I think that's coming out of too many people losing their shirts on giving like really good deals, and then they walk away and you spend an hour making this game and you made like $1,000 and you're like, my per hour rate on this project was real low.
Right. Yeah.
So I think there's some of that, but so I think that has happened more. I think people have been moving towards charging shipping after the fact more.
Yeah.
Which is something that I always really hated. And I resisted for a long time, but I got enough feedback that, like, at least that was surprising to me that, like, a lot of people prefer that. Like, well, I make more money if I do it that way anyway. But I've always struggled with that moment where I back something for 20, here's $50, I want the game. And then a month and a half later, here's an email, oh, you have to pay another $15 in shipping.
Right.
And I always feel like, I already paid for this game. Why am I paying for this again?
Right. Yep.
But it seems like there's a certain percent, like a significant percentage of people that would prefer to split up the purchase over multiple transactions so they don't have to have it all at one time.
Yeah.
And other people, from a creator's benefit, obviously, Kickstarter doesn't get their cut when that happens, so I make more money. So I'm a fan of that as a creator, but I'd be willing to sacrifice that percentage if all the backers would prefer not to do it that way, because I'm trying to make my people happy.
Right. That's cool.
So, that's a big move. I'm sure other Kickstarter creators you talk to are saying the same thing.
Are you seeing a trend that, and this is what I've been wondering, because I watch board games from my vantage point, right? As an agency, as somebody who does these podcasts, who just talks to people about it a lot. Sure. Are you finding that it's starting to get more and more like you've got to be a bigger player? You've got to, for these campaigns to go and, if you're doing the campaign that, hey, I just want to raise 10 grand. Like, I just want to get this game off, that it's getting more and more challenging to do that on Kickstarter.
I think that opportunity is still there for people, but I think the consumer's expectation as to like how far along the product is in its development cycle, and like how good the Kickstarter page looks and how well presented the information is. Like Kickstarter backers are getting more savvy about like they see bad Kickstarter, Kickstarter's gone bad, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so they're more wary of that, of like, trying to make sure that they can trust the person who's running the Kickstarter project, and it seems like they have their stuff together. So I think that is true. Like early days of Kickstarter, you could just fund an idea. You're like,
yeah, I know. Right.
Here's a picture I drew. I want to make a storybook.
Yeah.
Give me money. Yeah. You can do that. Now, if you're doing a storybook, you're like, here's a storybook. Here's the first one I got that, this test print I have. All the illustrations are done. Right. Here's a sample of the book. Like you have to be way much further down the process and invest more of your own money in the product before asking other people for money.
Yep.
So that's definitely true. And I think that's a good thing. I think those projects where you could just have an idea and throw a Kickstarter page together in an afternoon and ask for $5,000 and you would just get it. Like, I mean, that's cool, but I don't think that those, it just seems like there's lots of opportunities for abuse in terms of people walking away or not doing a good job, or their delivery timelines are just, way out the window by multiple years or whatever.
Yeah, it hurts the whole thing, right? The bad experiences on other Kickstarters. Like, I remember, I bought some headphones 3 years ago. I'm not getting them. I never these wireless headphones, never getting them.
Yeah. So. I've got a couple projects I've backed that I never got. One was from somebody who I know personally, but that I used to work with.
Well, but that's an awkward conversation.
Yeah, we don't talk about that. Anyway, I mean, it's like if a Kickstarter project goes bad, all the people that backed it are mad, and then there's a certain number of people that are going to be like, Kickstarter is a scam. I'm never backing any projects ever again. Yep. And then all the people who are doing good work, that are trying to do cool stuff and honest and on there just trying to do their thing, they all get penalized for that other person's misdeeds. So, that's, I guess in that way, I'm glad the backers are getting savvier, and I'm glad they're demanding higher quality projects. That means the bar to entry for that noob is higher. And I was there too.
I think it's okay. I agree with that. I'm on your page. I think it's okay. It's you should be putting your own time and sweat and tears into getting the project a little bit farther along. That's all. Put your homework in. So let's flip over a little bit to like maybe your creative style. I mean, since you do make games, like when you're starting to build your worlds out, or you're building out that game, like what is your process like for this? I'm always fascinated with it because, again, it's coming from creative, right? You've got to build this. You've got to, but how do you typically start when you say I'm going to make a game? Now what?
Right. And the process of like I'm going to make a game. Well, there's so there's kind of two main paths. One is mechanics first, and the other one's theme first, right? So. And I've designed games kind of using both methods. My first game was a mechanics first game, where it's like I just have random cards and some cubes, and I put them on the table. I start moving around, start thinking about ideas, things that I'm trying to like, initial things I'm trying to figure out, like, what is the goals of the game? A lot of times it's just getting points, but like, what is an interesting novel way of doing that with like components you already have? So I pull pieces from out of other games and I move them around, and then I take Sharpies out and I start crossing things out and writing on cards. And then like, so in that game, Bullfrogs, I just had this idea of like, what if these pieces were on this card? And then like, what happens if like, pieces like had to jump to like adjacent cards and stuff like that? And like, how would that work out? So I was just moving things around and just like trying to figure out like, what would a turn potentially feel like? And what is the goals of the game? And then you just get it out and start. You say, okay, here's the rule set. Let's play it. Okay, these 10 things didn't work. Here are the changes, and here's the rule set. Let's try it this way. And it's just a very kind of play test over and over and over. It's like until you find the fun. It's like an iterative design process, which Whereas in Role Player, which is a game I designed as well, that one came like theme first. So it's like I played somebody's role-playing game, and I gave them feedback, and I remember saying that my feedback was like, I don't really like the game part of it, but like this character creation part is kind of fun. And then like this light bulb appears above my head and says, what if the whole game was about making characters? And then I said, I'm going to go work on that right now because that's an amazing idea. And so that was the theme, is like creating characters. And I had all these reference points of like, whether it be playing D&D or Vampire or, video game, role-playing games like Ultima and Final Fantasy and stuff back, Skyrim and all that other stuff. So like I had all those points of reference, and it's just like all coalescing into what this game is, So I didn't have in my mind, I'm going to make sure that this game is about manipulating dice to solve this puzzle. It was more about like, I want to make a game about creating characters. Like, how do I do that? And I think, different designers work in different ways. I probably prefer to work mechanics first, but sometimes like you just get a thematic inspiration and then you just figure it out, So
that's cool. And I'm always fascinated too, because I think these ideas can go on forever. That's why we see expansion packs.
Sure.
When do you know that? All right, I have to stop. Like I got the game.
Right.
It's good. I've tested it. Even though I could add these 10 other things, if I wanted to, but we're ready to go.
So, yeah, scope mitigation is kind of what we're talking about. And so there's two layers to this. One is like within a game. So I'm working on this game. It's got all these features, and it just comes out of play testing. It's like how long, this game is taking 2 hours long to play. In my mind, I wanted this to be like a 60 to 90-minute game.
Sure.
What can I cut?
Right.
Or it's like, here are the 10 things you can do in the game. These 3 are the things that people seem to really respond most positively about. These are the ones that they're talking about. Let's get rid of like 4 or 5 of these other things, and like, how does that affect the game? And really focus on the things that people are talking about, that they're having the most fun with, and like pivot other features so that they're all reinforcing the fun part, right? So find the fun, and then just have everything else reinforcing that piece. And then obviously like things that hit the cutting room floor can always be kind of mined for expansions and stuff down the road.
Sure.
The other things to keep in mind is that is manufacturing, right? So, there's a couple of things. When you're working on a game, I'm always thinking about like, what box size does this fit in?
Yeah. Because
box size for a board game determines how much people what people's value they put on that thing. If I have the most amazing game in the world, that you've ever played, and it's in a box this big, no one will pay more than $10 for it. It doesn't matter how good it is. It doesn't.
Yep. Right.
And then if you have like a mediocre game that's in this giant box, people will pay $100 for it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
At least out the gate. When it's sitting on the shelf and nobody's seen it before, like that's how much they're willing to pay for it. So, and this was an important lesson that I learned in one of my early games that I published from a guy named Scott Eaton called Blend Off, where it's a small game, and my thought was like, I want to make this like as small as possible so it's compact and people can like play it on the go, and it's going to be great. And then, but in my mind, I had this vision of like, but it's going to have all these awesome wood pieces. They're all going to be, and it's going to have this die that's painted differently on every side. And I had this grandiose plans of like what I saw this product being. And then I'm working with the manufacturer, and they're like, this is how much it costs to make. And then there's this kind of calculation that people use in the board game industry of like manufacturing cost to MSRP, to the final price to the consumer. Yep. And it's this ratio. And it's mainly because like everybody in the world gets a cut along the way, whether it's there's the freighting costs from China or whatever and around the world, and then you've got distributors and you've got the retailers get their cut, which is pretty significant. So they use this ratio from like 1 to 5 or 1 to 6. Yeah. If like you want to make any money, your manufacturing cost to MSRP has to be like at least 1 to 4, if not 1 to 5.
Yeah.
So on this small little game that had these amazing components in this tiny little box, it was like, based on what the manufacturing cost was, it's like, this is like a $35 game.
Right.
It's like, nobody's going to buy a game this big that's $35.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how good it is.
Yep.
So I ended up pricing it at 25. So I wasn't making a whole lot of money out of it.
Right.
And then, if anything, to be honest, and I ran it on Kickstarter twice. That's the only project that I've had to run on Kickstarter twice. A big piece of the second time around was just like, I'm willing to take on more risk. I'm just going to just not require as much money from backers, and I'm going to do a significantly smaller print run. And in the end, people still don't want to pay $25.
Yeah, it's what it is.
So,
that's cool. Well, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about this Kickstarter specifically. I mean, we haven't even mentioned it yet, right? So, but you've got over.
I talked through the design.
Well, we talked about the design, but we haven't talked about the actual some of the numbers, right? So, you've got 7 days to go in this when we're talking. Over 5,000 backers, over $270,000. So obviously it's a game that's doing well, right? In the Kickstarter world. Yeah, it's doing well. Has there been anything that has stood out in this campaign that you were not expecting? Is there a country that's popped up or anything weird that you're like, wow, I wasn't expecting that for this game?
No. So I guess the thing that's unique about this project for me, as any Kickstarter backer knows, stretch goals is a big deal to at least a certain population of the people that back Kickstarter projects. And the project I had done over the summer had a long list of stretch goals, and I usually will do the stretch goal thing. And I think people understand, like we was talking before, Kickstarter backers are getting more savvy. So I think people understand that there's a certain amount of theater associated with stretch goals, right? Yep. Some of them are real, some of them aren't really. But they often offer things to talk about, right? So you got this Kickstarter going, and it gives you check out these cool new stretch goals. We're going to find out what the next ones are. You've got all these kind of fun things to talk about. And then from a creator's perspective, especially if you're a one-man show, I've got a handful of friends and people that are contractors and stuff that are helping me manage some of the stuff. But at the end of the day, that process is insanely stressful. And I was like, well, on this one, I'm not doing stretch goals. Let's see how it goes.
Right.
It's the only Kickstarter I've ever done that had 0 stretch goals. And it's following up an existing well-liked game. And I know some people don't like to, there's always kind of this discussion about is Kickstarter a pre-order system or is it not a pre-order system? Kickstarter specifically says that they're not, but I think a lot of companies treat it like it is.
Yep.
And so this one is kind of leaning more in that zone of here's the game. I've given you all the information. If you want it, pledge.
Click the button.
If you don't, that's cool too.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of it's a product offering. And there's, when you run a Kickstarter, especially when you have stretch goals and you don't have a built-in audience for something, it's a hustle to try to find those backers. I need to find people to back my project because I want to make it real. The fact that I don't really have to hustle on this project has made my personal life much more enjoyable.
I'm sure. Yeah.
And when I finished the previous project, which was called Role Player Adventures, it was July, and afterwards I was like, I don't know if I want to do this Cartographers one, man, because it was just mentally taxing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I all my clients, they underestimate how much work it is all the time. Sure. And I'm like, guys, it's every day, 10, 12-hour days. They're like, well, what would I be doing? Everything. You're literally just doing everything, So, yeah.
Trying to make the world happy.
Yeah. Right. Trying to make everybody happy and everybody has an opinion about your product too, because you did it wrong.
Right. You can't get it right. It's impossible.
No, you can't get it right, pretty much. So, so with 7 days to go, a couple weeks for the money to all drop, but what starts happening for you to get the game out into people's hands? What starts happening?
So here's the other amazing thing about not doing stretch goals is that I can have everything ready to go. And that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
So basically, we're going to polish the last couple things and do another quick round of playtesting. And it's just going to go to print. It's I mean, I try to make sure all my projects are like as done as they could be. Sometimes I'll leave like little gaps for things that people can contribute to. So like in previous projects, people have been to like write backstory content, or people have been offered up, been able to vote, like what kind of character do you want this guy to be? Cool. Like a dwarf or an elf, like that kind of stuff. Like kind of real focused areas where people can vote and be a part of the creative process. At the end of the day, I'm not a huge proponent of like crowd-based design. I like someone with a singular vision and executing on that, or maybe a couple people. But I try to leave pockets for the crowd to contribute to the project. And this one, because it has to integrate with the other game, I have lots of limitations. Like the card stock has to be the exact same. Because the boxes are fitting together to look cool. The finish on the boxes have to be the same. They have to be the same size. The pads of paper have to be the same size. Like the pencils have to be the same. Right. So like there's a lot fewer kind of creative decisions that have to take place. So we can just move forward. Yeah, that's great. So the plan is for me to like deliver this game kind of at the same time as the game I did in the summer, which was a much more complex game. And one thing that's interesting about this project that I've never done before, and I don't see it very often, is that I'm giving anyone who backed the first project like a $5 discount on their shipping on this product.
Oh, that's cool.
Because we are shipping them together, so I'm going to save money, so I might as well pass that on, right?
Right.
And it incentivizes people to go back and hit the pledge manager and back the old one too.
Yep.
Trying to tie those together.
Yep. That's cool.
So that's kind of been interesting. I always think it's, I don't know, this is like random Kickstarter comments now, but I always love the point in a Kickstarter when you've amassed enough crowd. I don't know what the number is. I think it's usually around 2,000 people. Is that like the crowd starts answering their own questions. they start self-managing. Yeah. Which is from a creator's perspective is amazing. Yeah. It's like I don't have to answer every single question. I've got that one, that two, that three, like advocates that become like real champions of the product.
Look up in the questions. They're answering the question. Yeah.
Right. They're like, oh, Keith said this a couple days ago, and it's like, sweet.
Yeah.
I can sleep for an extra 5 minutes this morning because there's like one less Kickstarter question.
That is great. Yeah. Yeah, it is great when they start self-managing themselves. That crowd of people, it's awesome when it happens.
I mean, that can go poorly as well, right?
Oh yeah. No, I've been a part of the poorly ones too. No, I've been there. So yeah, no, I'm aware. Yeah. So, you try to avoid that at all costs.
Something negative in the comments section that can start like picking up steam and start spiraling out of control can really be detrimental to a Kickstarter project as well. And I've had that happen a couple times where there was danger of that happening. One was like a guy that was getting really like kind of riling people up a little bit, and some of it was positive, so it wasn't like clearly a negative thing. But then like he ended up like requesting me to post this picture that he had he was joking around with the people in the comments about, and he had like some white supremacy tattoos on his hands and stuff, and I was like, we're not doing that.
No. Thank you.
And then I had another one that was just like, there was somebody that was kind of real poison in the well, like just had kind of a lot of negative things to say, and I wasn't really sure where it was coming from, but like my technique is just like come to that person with like honesty and like an open mind and an open heart, and be like, like, why are you so bothered by this? Is there anything that I can do to help resolve that? And it turned out that there was like some email that was missed. I'm not sure if it was on my side or his side from a previous project that he was just mad about. And then like, or that he didn't understand how like something worked that was clearly laid out, and like he misread it, and like he was just mad about it. And it's like, well, let's talk about that. And let's figure out like, how to make that better and how to fix that. There's no so that, and then that happened. Well, I kind of was real open with him, and then he just kind of went away.
He just went away. Yeah. I know people are nuts in the. They're just nuts in this world. But well, let's flip over to let's do a quick lightning round question. Nothing to do with games or Kickstarter at this point. So quick lightning round.
I don't know anything about anything that's not Kickstarter games.
Well,
so
yeah, I don't
I'm gonna
really
fail.
ask my wife. She's like, all you talk about is this stuff. So how about, are you watching anything on the old streaming channels right now? Netflix, Hulu, anything?
I'm like, lately I've been just jumping into a bunch of different things. So I'm watching Haunting of Bly Manor.
Oh, yeah, Manor. I think it's Manor, right?
2 episodes in.
Yeah.
I'm watching Utopia on Amazon.
Is that?
It's on Prime.
Yeah.
It's okay. I just got finished watching The Great Pottery Throwdown on HBO Max, which is pretty good, surprisingly. And like, there's 500 other things that I wish I had time to watch. But yeah.
How about a book? Are you reading a book at all right now?
Yeah, I'm a big Stephen King fan. So the latest from him, which is called, it's got a cat on the cover. I don't it's a bunch of short stories.
Okay.
Which are really good.
All right. How about, is there a movie? Like
it's called Until It Bleeds, by the way. But
Until It Bleeds. Okay.
A movie.
An actual movie.
Well, I mean, movies, that means something different now than it did a year ago. But
like an actual, like a 2-hour movie. I don't know. Like it's like a real movie. I always love, when I asked this question recently, I've been asking this since the pandemic, because I'm like, well, we're all locked in. But people are always just like, I don't have time for movies. But then they'll say, like, I watched this 12-part series that was all like, an hour every episode. So I'm like, you spent 12 hours watching.
Yeah. It's just 20 hours of whatever.
You're right.
Yeah. So I just watched something 2 nights ago. Is that Enola Holmes, the one where it's like Sherlock Holmes's sister.
Yeah.
It's got Bonham Carter in it.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. Yeah.
It's
I can picture it in here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's, Alona is alone spelled backwards. But yeah, it's pretty. We were in the middle of it, and we were like an hour in. I was like, "Is this like a full movie?" Like the idea of sitting in one spot.
When's episode 2 start? You know.
I was like, I want that. Like, I want to have to press that button that says next episode instead of like get that.
Right.
Take it on versus like, man, this is kind of long. The movie was okay. Yeah, I would give it a, I don't know, 6 out of 10.
Okay. How about podcasts? You listen to any podcasts?
No, not really.
Well, mine. Obviously, you listen to this one. I mean, you're a major subscriber.
I'm too busy watching all these damn TV shows.
Yeah. You got it. Something's got to give. That's what's got to give. And how about my last one will be around? Is there like a blog or a site you go to for like your world? Like, I go to this thing all the time, and that's where I get a lot of info.
Like, I mean, like things like BoardGameGeek.com?
Yeah, I mean, something along the, I don't know if that might be in your world, or if there's like, I don't know, I go to Medium articles I read all the time, or...
Oh, yeah, I mean, I'm a Facebook scroller, you know, like, which always has links to things. But, I mean, Board Game Geeks is a common place that you'll find me on, just because it is the mecca of board games. There's, like, no shortage of information, and there's no shortage of UI elements that are difficult to navigate as well, but which is kind of feels like a joke at this point. But I mean, it's a great website. Has its own email system. Has its own has all these kind of. It has so many features that like you could spend a long time just like digging and finding like, oh, it does this. Oh, it does this. It does this. And everything works in a way that you don't expect it to. So. But there is a ton of information on it about board games. Yeah.
All right. And how about where can people like dive into your world? Where should people go? Like how do you have people kind of go into your universe of games and all that sort of stuff?
Oh, sure. So I mean, www.thunderworksgames.com. That you can find lots of information about my games. There is a official Role Player Universe Facebook page that was started by fans, but I interact there all the time.
Okay.
Sometimes we even like do like contests specifically for those people that are in that group to try to, make that make it feel special for people. And because I'm in there, like there's people who are involved there that they know they can reach out to the creator and get questions answered very quickly about all my games. So there's a role player specific universe one, and then there's just Thunderworks Games on Facebook. So I'm definitely there. I'm on Twitter, pretty active there. And then I've got a couple other folks that help me out on social media that people interact with as well.
It's awesome.
So those are kind of the main places to find Thunderworks Games and Keith Matejka.
Very cool. Well, Keith, I appreciate you taking time out of your day. We went a little long, but it was a great conversation, man. I appreciate it. There's a lot of stuff to unpack here in the old board game world, man. And you clearly are doing well over here, man. So I encourage everybody to go over to Kickstarter right now, check it out. You got about 7 days to go, so go back, become one of your backers. But yeah, I appreciate taking time out of your day, man.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much.